Big Batista. Some people love him, others aren't so keen. Personally, I don't mind Batista at all, and I can remember a time when fans couldn't get enough of the animal, but boy, did he ever get tore a new one when he made his comeback in 2014. I always thought Dave was just a victim of circumstance during this WWE return, and he was also the victim of the WWE's own bad decision making and their inability to see something that was pretty much right in front of their faces. But I'll explain all this in today's video. Let's take a look at Batista's WWE return in 2014, a return that even Dave himself wasn't too pleased with. At WrestleMania 21 back in 2005, Batista closed the show by becoming World Heavyweight Champion. This kind of achievement isn't handed out lightly, especially back then, and winning a main championship in Mania's final match is something only a select few can ever say they've accomplished. It tells us that WWE were invested in Batista, and right enough, he did remain a top player until he decided to leave 5 years later. Batista spoke candidly about the creative direction WWE was going in. He wasn't a fan of the PG era, and to him, the WWE wasn't the same company it once was when he made his debut. He also wanted to get into movies, and he would end up landing a few notable roles. In 2013, he played Diaz in the movie Riddick, but even bigger than that was his role as Drax the Destroyer in Guardians of the Galaxy, due to get released in 2014. Towards the end of post-production, Batista decided to come back to WWE. Many people have wrongfully stated that Batista's return was all about promoting the movie, but Guardians was hardly mentioned on WWE TV when Batista came back, except for odd little mentions by the commentators. So this seemed more like something Batista wanted to do on a personal level rather than something he was being forced to do. Of course, making his name fresh again on weekly television wouldn't hurt matters, and reminding WWE fans of who he was wasn't a bad idea. Guardians of the Galaxy would surpass expectations, the movie got great reviews, it became the big summer blockbuster of 2014, but the Batista WWE return earlier in the year was the complete opposite. At the very end of 2013, the WWE began playing videos on their weekly shows, letting everyone know that Batista was coming back. Not gonna lie, I was looking forward to the animal making his return, and I remember others looking forward to it too. You can take a look back at posts online during these couple of weeks, and there were some fans who were hyped to see Batista make his return, though not a lot of people would like to admit that in hindsight. Batista would show up on the January 20th, 2014 episode of Raw where he confronted Randy Orton, and he also promised to win the Royal Rumble. And then the problems began. There were a lot of fans looking forward to Batista's return, but those same fans didn't necessarily want him to win the Royal Rumble. That was maybe a step too far. You see, around this time period, a guy named Daniel Bryan had only gone and made himself one of the most popular superstars in the entire business. And what's more, Daniel Bryan's popularity wasn't manufactured or even planned by the company. Bryan's push was very organic and he became the people's choice. It was actually incredible how fans took to him. And Daniel's 2013 and 2014 run is something I want to cover in a separate video, but in short, fans wanted Daniel to headline WrestleMania, not a guy who disappeared and came back again. Take Daniel Bryan out of the equation too, and WWE still got a pretty big problem if they want a guy like Batista winning the Royal Rumble. There's only a select few legends in the company that fans have allowed to come back and jump straight into the main event scene upon their return. Guys like Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, even The Rock had a few detractors when he came back to face John Cena. But you've got to be a special legend to just waltz back in and claim spots that many fans believe should go to guys on the current full-time roster. Batista was great during his early days in the company. He was a former world and WWE champion. He headlined a ton of pay-per-views, but he wasn't on the same level as others who came back for a brief stint. Anyway, Batista also confronted Alberto Del Rio later in the night. Del Rio had been ripping Dave apart in the run-up to his big return, so Alberto took a Batista bomb and the crowd popped. Still, fans were a little anxious heading into the Royal Rumble later in the week, and already the vast majority of fans were hoping that Daniel Bryan would rise to the occasion and claim his spot in the Mania main event. Not a lot of people wanted Batista to win the Royal Rumble. Also, the fact that Batista wore skinny jeans on Raw seemed to be a talking point for many fans, seriously, and this wouldn't be the last time Batista's dress sense was brought up during this return. The WWE released a great half-hour documentary that covered Batista's return at the Royal Rumble, and we got to see him backstage before the event. He's absolutely stressed out, he's a nervous wreck, he has issues with his gear, he can't stop to enjoy the moment and enjoy what lies ahead of him. It honestly looks like he's putting himself through torture before even stepping out into the arena. Batista came in at number 28, and when fans realised Daniel Bryan wasn't even taking part in the Rumble match, the audience completely turned on Dave. Roman Reigns was the last man eliminated, and fans weren't very big on Roman either during this time period, yet they still cheered for Reigns when, in reality, everyone knew that Batista was just going to win this thing. Daniel Bryan had wrestled earlier in the night. He lost to Bray Wyatt in a match that I feel is kinda underrated, and it's one of my favourite Daniel Bryan matches to watch during this era. But fans were expecting Bryan to surprise everyone, enter the Royal Rumble, and win the whole thing. When that didn't happen, it was Batista who took the blame. This wasn't Batista's fault, of course. The WWE knew Daniel was wide hot, and even if they knew what they were doing and they were playing the long game to boost Bryan's underdog story, it was still a horrifically bad move because now you've went ahead and destroyed Batista and the fans' perception of Batista. Dave said in interviews that he wanted to come in as a heel, and the fans' reaction towards him actually hurt Batista on a personal level because he wanted to let fans know his comeback had all the best intentions. But fans were enraged. They started a fucking cancel WWE Network trend. They threatened to boycott shows, and Batista felt that the fans weren't just booing him as a character, but they booed him because they just didn't want him to be there. In saying that, when the Rumble went off the air, he decided to rub it in a little by flipping the fans off, and he made fun of Daniel Bryan too, but I'm guessing he just didn't know what to do after getting such a harsh reaction. On that documentary I was talking about, Batista said his biggest worry about the Royal Rumble was potentially letting the fans down, but the way this was laid out, there was absolutely no way the fans wouldn't be let down whether Batista was involved or not. So the WWE had a big problem on their hands. Fans had completely rejected the winner of the Royal Rumble. I'm going to be honest here, I always thought that Daniel Bryan was going to win the championship at Mania, even as far back as the Royal Rumble. And even after Batista won the Rumble, I still thought that Bryan was somehow still going to get that big Mania moment. I'm not sure how far back WWE knew this too, but they sure did play up to it well after the Rumble match. Though again, I want to cover all the Daniel Bryan stuff in a separate video. Batista's crowd reaction was a problem. The next night on Raw, Batista got booed again. He told WWE World Champion Randy Orton that he was leaving WrestleMania with the gold and nothing was going to change that, and that just annoyed fans even more. WWE would have been wise to turn Batista heel as soon as possible really, but they put him in a short mini feud against Alberto Del Rio. The following week, Del Rio attacked Batista, and then the week after that, Batista got revenge by powerbombing Del Rio through a table, but the reactions weren't getting any better. As a matter of fact, fans were now taking delight in ripping Batista apart, and hey, I don't think it's because fans actually despise Dave Batista, they just absolutely adore Daniel Bryan. Batista was on a path that fans felt Bryan should have been on, and on more than one occasion, Batista just had to tell fans to deal with it, it's their problem. The boos continued at the Elimination Chamber show when Batista met Del Rio in a singles match. Fans were now calling Dave Bootista, and the negative reactions continued the night after Elimination Chamber where Batista once again defeated Alberto Del Rio. It was bad, it really was, and the WWE finally relented and they let Batista turn heel. Daniel Bryan had managed to get himself involved in the WrestleMania main event. He had to beat Triple H on the show of shows to get a chance at the WWE World Championship. If Bryan beat Hunter, the main event would become a triple threat encounter featuring champion Randy Orton, Dave Batista, and Daniel Bryan. So if Bryan was going to win the big one at Mania, he sure would have all the odds stacked against him. Batista turning heel wasn't only good for the Mania main event, but it was also good for Batista. So, on the 20th of February 2014 episode of SmackDown, Batista cut a promo in the ring where he said he loved the wrestling business and he loved WWE. He didn't come back to get cheered, he came back to win the WWE World Championship. Batista could destroy anyone on the roster. He's the best representative of WWE alive today, and that includes Hulk Hogan and The Rock. And then Batista wonders what happened to the real man of WWE, what happened to the attitude. Fans cheer for 195-pound wannabes who'll never be as good as Batista. Everything about Batista screams WWE World Champion, and from this point on, Batista will systematically destroy every one of these fans' favourite heroes on his road to WrestleMania. On the 3rd of March episode of Raw, during a backstage interview, Batista ripped into fans once again, and he again spoke badly of the current roster. Batista can't believe the guys who pass as WWE superstars in 2014, and he thinks the fans are watching too many movies and reading too many comics because average guys like Daniel Bryan don't become superheroes. Daniel Bryan will never be like Dave Batista, and the fans will just have to deal with it. Later that night, Batista wrestled Bryan in the Raw main event. The fans chanted, "You can't wrestle" at Batista. The match would get stopped due to Randy Orton's interference, but Batista ended up doing the Authority a favour. He took Bryan out with a spear. He then let Triple H send a message to Bryan about Daniel's little WrestleMania fantasy coming to an end. And when Bryan fought back, Batista hit him with a Bootista bomb, which again left Daniel vulnerable. Hunter hits Bryan with a pedigree, and so the full Batista heel turn had been completed. Batista went into WrestleMania 30 not fully aligned with Randy Orton, but he certainly disliked Bryan a whole lot more than the current champion. It's incredible to think that at one point the WWE were maybe banking on Batista to make Mania 30 more memorable, and by the end of the show he pretty much became the last person anyone was talking about. Mania 30's remembered for two things: the end of The Undertaker's undefeated streak and Daniel Bryan defying the odds and winning the WWE World Championship. The Triple H vs Daniel Bryan opening match was great. The two put on a top WrestleMania opening match, and you could tell during this bout that the fans were going to go crazy if Bryan won the championship in the main event. Bryan defeated the game, so the main event got changed to a triple threat match. During the main event, Randy Orton and Batista had no problems fighting with each other, but one of the better spots in the match came when the old Evolution teammates joined forces for a powerbomb RKO spot. Fans had no choice but to applaud when that move was pulled off. In the end, it was Batista who topped out and Daniel Bryan became champion, giving fans a feel-good WrestleMania moment that's now remembered as the Miracle on Bourbon Street. Dave was due to hang around WWE for another while yet, and really, the company had to work out what to do next, so they decided to go back to the past and bring back the stable that helped Batista rise up the ranks. On the Raw after WrestleMania, both Batista and Randy Orton wanted a singles rematch against Daniel Bryan, but Triple H said he was going to deal with Bryan his way. And Hunter also reminded Orton and Batista that when the three of them are on the same page, they're unstoppable. Batista and Orton destroyed the Usos later in the evening. They opted to beat the hell out of their opponents on the outside, and they got disqualified. And then, later on, the two attacked Daniel Bryan before the new champ was supposed to face Triple H in a title match. Corporate Kane got in on the action too, and then Triple H came to the ring to make the cover and become the new WWE World Champion. The Shield then appeared from the audience. They stood on one side of the ring while Orton, Batista and Kane stood on the other. Triple H tried to play peacemaker, but Roman hit Hunter with a spear, and then an all-out war broke out in the ring. Daniel Bryan and the Shield get the better of the Authority, and Raw ends with Triple H promising to get revenge. On the 14th of April 2014 episode of Raw, WWE tried to turn back the clock and bring back one of the most dominant factions of the Ruthless Aggression era. Daniel Bryan wasn't in the arena, but the Shield were. Triple H reminded Batista and Orton that together the three of them were unstoppable and they'd have more than enough to handle the Shield. But Randy and Batista didn't really care about forming an alliance. They wanted their shot at the WWE World Championship. Later on in the evening, the Shield attacked Batista and Randy during another tag team match with the Usos, and after the bout, Triple H just looked at his old teammates and he said, "Told ya," before walking off. The Shield were then booked in a 3-on-11 handicap match as punishment for their actions the week prior. Ambrose, Reigns and Rollins had no chance at all, and they ended up getting destroyed within a few minutes. And then fans could hear that familiar sound of a clock ticking. The Evolution logo appeared on the Titantron as Motorhead's Line in the Sand played in the arena, and out walks Batista, Triple H and Randy Orton. Evolution were back, and that meant Batista was back in the heel faction that pretty much made him years prior. The Shield take another beating, and Triple H tells Roman Reigns to believe in Evolution. The crowd boos as Evolution celebrate to close out Raw, and now the Shield and the whole WWE had a problem. The following week, we got the boys back in their sharp dress clothes, the swagger was back, the better than you attitude was back, Evolution had truly returned, and Triple H's proteges were more dangerous than ever now that they had successful careers behind them. It was like Evolution had finally evolved. The thing is though, and again, just being honest, nobody cared. Well, that may be a bit harsh. The reformation of Evolution didn't carry as much weight as what I think Triple H and the WWE had hoped. Hunter was already doing this authority thing, so essentially his role didn't change. Randy Orton was already a heel leading up to this reunion, and we have already learned everything about Batista's comeback so far. I don't know, you just expect it to be more, and it just didn't get the same hype you'd expect from a faction reunion. Evolution had a bit of a reputation with fans too, especially fans on the internet, the whole reign of terror and all that business. Evolution's a group that not many fans go out of their way to praise, even though it created two legitimate WWE main eventers. So my guess is that most fans, not all, but most just didn't want to see the faction again because there wasn't a whole lot they could now offer. Also, there's no Ric Flair here, but we'll get to the Nature Boy in a moment. As it would turn out, however, Evolution reformed not only to give Batista and Orton something to do, but they reformed to help the Shield get over. Nature Boy Ric Flair made a surprise appearance on the April 28th episode of Raw, and the boys in Evolution were happy to see Slick Rick make his return. Flair, however, surprised his old teammates when he backed the Shield instead of Evolution. Flair said he rolled with the Four Horsemen for years, the Horsemen controlled the marketplace as did Evolution, but Flair is seeing greatness come full circle. Tonight, Flair's surrounded by superstars who exemplify power, style and grace, but Flair's talking about the Shield tonight and not his former faction buddies. Flair shook hands with Rollins, Reigns and Ambrose, and he left the ring while leaving Evolution quite confused. The Nature Boy gave the Shield a big endorsement, and the fans didn't know what to make of it, neither did the Shield for that matter. If you're going to bring back Evolution, then, in my opinion, Flair should have been part of it, or at least he should, give his old faction the thumbs up instead of siding with the enemy for absolutely no reason at all. Nothing comes of this, by the way. Flair leaves the ring and he doesn't get involved in the angle again. From here, Evolution would have two matches against the Shield on pay-per-view, and the Shield were victorious in both matches. In this era, the Shield were the guys people wanted to root for, and indeed, times had changed quite a lot since Evolution ran the show week in and week out. So really, fans of Evolution can't complain. The old guard's supposed to make the young guys look good, and that's exactly what happened in these two matches. At Extreme Rules, Evolution were defeated in a 6-man tag when Roman Reigns speared Batista for the pinfall victory. There was a great moment in the match when Seth Rollins dived from the stands onto Randy and Triple H, and the next match then was scheduled to take place at WWE Payback. Triple H said the gloves were off this time and Evolution were going to pick the Shield apart one by one, so the Payback encounter would be an elimination match. The reason why I needed to cover everything here right up to the end of Evolution's short run was because of this. Dave Batista's ring gear at Payback 2014. Batista wore all blue, which would have been fine, but in this match everyone else wore black, so Batista kinda stood out, and he also wore those big blue arm sleeves. This, ladies and gentlemen, also caused the internet to go into a frenzy. I'm fairly certain a large portion of fans won't remember a thing about the match itself, but everyone remembers Batista's ring gear, and yeah, it did look out of place. Normally, I couldn't care less about ring attires and all that, but I do remember saying, why is he wearing that back when I watched this live? Dave's name would change from Batista to Bluetista on this evening, So we have Bootista and Bluetista. Kinda makes you think that fans weren't taking the animal all that seriously in 2014, doesn't it? The memes then came rolling in and the gear became quite iconic. Collectors could also eventually pick up an elite Bluetista action figure if they wanted to. It took on a life of its own, and Bluetista even trended on Twitter the night of Payback. WWE announced it during the match. Dave didn't take all this too well, to say the least. He took to Twitter and he wrote, "6 guys go to war and beat the shit out of each other, and what did the genius Smarks walk away with? Batista wore blue, what a loser. Hashtag dipshits." And look, I kinda agree with Dave to an extent here, and we should be more focused on what goes on in the ring and not what these big sweaty dudes are wearing in the ring. But I don't think complaining about it on Twitter and getting triggered about it did him any favors. It's just fans being humorous on social media, and it's just fans enjoying the show. It's only ring gear. But yeah, the blue gear didn't give Dave any superhuman powers or anything like that. The Shield completely wiped Evolution out. Not a single member of the Shield got eliminated in this tag team match, and Evolution put the new guys over, as they should. The match was also very good, and I'd forgotten how fun it was until I watched it back for this video. I'm a fan of Evolution, and I've no hesitations in saying so, but I came to terms with the faction being pretty much over after the first few weeks of this reunion. The crowds didn't react, the majority of online fans couldn't have cared less, so yeah, it wasn't all that great, and it's probably best left forgotten. Dave would leave WWE to focus on promoting Guardians of the Galaxy. He was due to come back, but again, the creative vision WWE had for him didn't quite align with what Batista wanted. To write Dave off, he demanded his WWE World title match, and Triple H wouldn't give it to him. He couldn't give it to him, seeing as Daniel Bryan was injured, so Batista literally waved bye-bye to Triple H and WWE the night after Payback. Funnily enough, Triple H told Batista not to come crawling back when his new movie crops out. Guardians ended up doing really well at the box office, as mentioned earlier, and it kinda makes you think that WWE should have handled Batista's turn a little better in 2014. In a nutshell, and in my own opinion, the comeback announcement was great, the Royal Rumble victory was a disaster, the heel turn worked, and the idea of reforming Evolution was good, but it turned out to be very underwhelming. Batista wears blue, fans laugh, and Batista says goodbye. When asked about this run, Batista said, "It was horrible. I tried to not take it personally, but I really did. And it hurt because it's hard to tell people that you want to be there for the right reasons, but they don't want to hear it. They just don't care why you're there, they just don't want you there." It was a hard thing for me to do, and it was harder for me to leave because I felt that I was starting to connect with the audience. I felt I was where I wanted to be, and we were pushing the personal stuff aside. I was kinda getting past that, but I had to leave. I had to go promote Guardians of the Galaxy. Batista's story, fortunately, doesn't end here though. He wanted to leave the company on a high note, and he'd get the opportunity to do so at WrestleMania 35 in a match against Triple H, and that return I felt was handled a lot better. So yeah, that's it really. The main problem in 2014 was the Royal Rumble victory, without a doubt. If it wasn't Batista, it would have been someone else, so I really don't blame him for how things went during this run. The WWE really should have known better with how hot Daniel Bryan was during this time period. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed this one, and take care.
I'm sick of all these people talking out their heads. I've never understood a damn thing that they says. From words to actions, never knowing what they're about. I guess I'll have to chew them up and spit them out. And I said, this television has a poison on its breath. This counterculture of both wicked lies and death. It makes my eyes bleed every time I turn